Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry, where today we are looking at, I decided that I'll be looking at the Pan-American battleships. Terry, why are we looking at Pan-American battleships? There are new French destroyers out there. Yes, I noticed, but I'm just finding my groove again. I'm just getting back to it, so I figured what else better to do than to take a tech tree line that's actually been out already for a little bit, and that looks suspiciously brawly. Battleship's relatively easy to play, and so I wouldn't look like a complete moron after being out of the game for such a long time. Well, so then, let's have a look at this line, shall we? Now, it's not that we didn't have Pan-American battleships before. We had the Rio at Tier 5, and we had the unfortunate incident of the Atlantico at Tier 8. If you are not aware of the unfortunate Atlantico incident, well, I'll give you a very, very brief rundown, because probably everybody knows about this, but this ship was just ever so slightly broken when it was released. The armor's too thick, and the secondaries were just silly, doing silly amounts of damage. So it was a matter of everybody could buy a ship which they could park in the middle of the map and then just farm damage from there without doing an awful lot. Now, it's not that you couldn't destroy an Atlantico, it was just that if you didn't know how, it turned out to be relatively difficult, which puts the Atlantico in a similar box with the Smolensk, with the only difference that the Smolensk you actually need to know what you're doing, whereas with the Atlantico, not so much. So if you see an Atlantico, kill it with fire preferably, or whatever else you have to have in at hand. Then the big question for me obviously then was, well, Pan-American battleships, are they now a tech tree Atlanticos? We have three ships, Tier 8, 9 and 10. We have the Ipiranga at Tier 8, a Brazilian battleship. We've got the Los Andes, which I have no idea what that's, probably Chilean or Argentinian. And we've got the Libertad at Tier 10. Now, given that everybody either speaks Spanish or Portuguese in the region, it's not entire, and the flags are not particularly helping. I'm going to have to actually do individual reviews for these ships to check them out. But we'll just do a very, very rough overview. Let's start out with Tier 8, because that's the most interesting one in everybody's mind. Well, at least on mine. Everybody else probably knows about this already. But how is that comparing to the Atlantico? So using the rather irritatingly broken compare tool, really wargaming. Could we put that back to what it was? It was much better before. Let's have a look. So the Atlantico obviously gets the completely overpowered secondary overload 3 and is an all-round secondary monster with the very large caliber manual secondaries. The Ipiranga gets a speed boost, which on a battleship we've only really seen on the French so far. So curious to see what that is. And she gets a combat instruction. So that means once you have done 15,000 points of damage, which isn't particularly hard to do in a battleship, you can activate the combat instruction, which increases the gun range on the auto secondaries by 20%. Not on the manual secondaries, however, only on the autos. It increases the accuracy by 10% of presumably all of them. So that's 10% dispersion off. And reduces the cooldown. I'm thinking what they mean here is reload, but by 10% for 20 seconds. So longer range on the auto secondaries, improved dispersion, and improved reload for 20 seconds. You can activate this as many times as you can. It's just a matter of digging up another 15,000 points of damage, which again isn't that particularly difficult on a battleship, so you can use that a fair few times. Now, statistics-wise, however, first of all, the Ipiranga does not have the completely broken armor of the Atlantico. I actually have to see if CIC still publishes armor stats, but just going by the numbers here, it's a similar damage reduction, but the 20% citadel protection isn't there. The fire and flooding resistance is lower, and the torpedo damage reduction may as well be absent and or made of paper. Or, I don't know, waving a magic wand, hoping that the torpedoes go elsewhere. That said, this thing is actually relatively quick for a battleship. And the turn rate, however, is pretty atrocious. So it's long, thin, and that makes it fast, but it doesn't want to turn very well. Now the guns. The guns are interesting because Well, you might have noticed just from the optics that all these ships are looking suspiciously British. And that's probably because they likely are. But again, I'm going to do individual reviews of these. But these guns also look suspiciously British. If I'm not mistaken, these are the guns from the King George V. Now, the guns on the King George V aren't bad, but this is Tier 8. We do get a lot of them, however. We get 6 twin turrets. And we get only an 18-second reload. If you're looking at the 28-second reload on the Atlantico, yes, that's where they nerfed the ship. Because the obvious problems on the Atlantico were the completely broken secondaries and the completely broken armor. So, of course, we nerfed the main guns. There are legal repercussions to the whole thing because you sold it and you can't mess with it after you've sold it without legal repercussions and other things. So there's a whole kerfuffle about it. You can't easily balance premiums. Yeah, there's a whole thing. Anyway, it is what it is. But we don't get the 234mm secondaries. We only get 150s. And we get 127mm guns, which looks suspiciously American, but we don't get an awful lot of them. Only 6 singles scattered around the countryside. The rest is rather similar. So is it a tech tree Atlantico? No, it isn't. How does she compare to the Bismarck? Because the Bismarck, obviously being the brawler at Tier 8, is a slightly different story than the Atlantico. The Bismarck is a bit better protected, although the overall damage reduction still on the Ipiranga is a tad better. Obviously the secondaries look very similar to the Bismarcks, the 150s. The big problem with the 150s is that they only fire high explosive, whereas the Bismarcks firing armor piercing. The high explosive tends not to have the sufficient penetration to get through destroyer armor, which means that you tend to not do an awful lot of damage, and the 1% fire chance on a 150mm gun means you're not also going to send an awful lot of fires with this thing either. The auto secondaries are, well, I would say better than on the Bismarck. But that's just on a single barrel. The difference being here that we've got 6 single auto secondaries and the Bismarck got 8 twins on them. The rest, again, marginal differences. So that's the Ipiranga. And when I looked at it from the stats, I said, well, it's probably playable, but like massively powerful, it isn't. So what's that then when we get to Tier 9? So what's the difference between a Tier 8 and Tier 9? We still get the combat instructions on the Los Andes, but they're looking a little different. So on the Ipiranga, we get the auto-secondary range 20%, we get 10% dispersion, and 10% reload. On the Los Andes, we get auto-secondary accuracy, but not range. And we don't get any dispersion on the manual secondaries either. And we get 10%. It is range and accuracy by 20%. Okay, so we do get the 20% overall. So it's slightly better than on the... Okay, now I got it again. That's slightly better than on the Ipiranga. I was wondering here for a second. That looked very odd. Other than that, yes, this is where we're going to start seeing the armor plating. So, shoo. But 10% fire flooding resistance means you're going to burn in these things, which is good because you need to have a counter to these, and fires is generally probably... it's going to be worse than on German battleships in this thing. Maneuverability is measured in weeks. And the guns, we've got bigger main guns. Here come the 234mm secondaries. And 2% fire chance, however, is not particularly great. So just a very brief check back on the Atlantico, what the fire chance was on that thing, on the 230s. Yeah, see, that's the difference, right? The Atlantico gets an 8% fire chance on the 234s. This should have been nerfed. Like, there's no good reason why this thing should have 8% fire chance on these secondary guns. The Los Andes doesn't get it. So it's more Atlantico-ish, but it's in Tier 9 as well, and then it doesn't get the stupid fire chance on the manual secondaries. And the Libertad at Tier 10, we're kind of having the same thing here. So it's auto-secondary range and accuracy. So same combat instructions, same armor, a little bit more, significantly more hit points actually. Still not a massive amount for tier 10. Turn time even worse, guns even bigger, and secondaries still don't have any reasonable fire chance. And yeah, auto secondaries, there's 8 of them, but they're there. So that's going to be an interesting thing to test. So far, this doesn't look particularly overpowered to me. It's nice to have this relatively large, the relatively large secondaries, but with a very low fire chance. Yeah, so we'll have to see what's really going on with that. So it's as you may see, I've currently tried to spec the Ipiranga for secondaries, but we also don't get the German module that we have on the German battleships for overall improved secondaries. Or we can either get the choice of reload on the manual secondaries, which, given that the manual secondaries are kind of crap on this ship, doesn't really make an awful lot of sense, or we can content ourselves with the range. But I think, again, I'll do a proper review for the ships. I will probably actually switch to main batteries, because the most of the work here I ended up doing with the main batteries. So what is this line then? Well, I've only tried the Tier 8 so far, but I would say tanky, yes, very tanky ships, they are. They burn, however, very, very quickly. So it's not that you can just blindly rush out into the open, because you will be burnt down into the ground. That said, you can actually do, if you're a bit measured about it, relatively precise and well-supported rushes, especially against battleships that are not firing high explosive at you. And you can make the most of the good armor damage reduction and everything else. And while you do have a decent amount from the secondaries, the main guns are numerous and have a pretty decent reload. So right now I'm treating this more like a really well-armored battle cruiser from a playstyle, but we shall see how that works out in the higher tiers. And I'm just going to show you a game that I have played in the Ipiranga. A full review of all the ships still coming once I've spent more time with all of them. This is just really a bit of an overview. I think this is a fun line, but I think it will require somewhat knowing what you're doing. I get that inkling, but we will see. We will see down the road how this goes. So let's take this thing for a spin. This is in the setup that I've shown you in the review. So I haven't made any changes to that just yet. And there's an Atlantico in each team, so at least that's balanced. And we are top tier, which is also nice. And there's also an Ipiranga on the enemy team, a Vladivostok, a Bayard, which is a massive problem for this kind of ship, a Cherbourg, which isn't much better, especially if the Cherbourg decides to fire high explosive at me, a Benson, and an Akatsuki on the team. So good game, no carriers. That immediately makes me happy. This is going to be obviously a problem for these ships, because you are absolutely at threat from any kind, especially American carriers with the triple fires. That's not going to be fun. So we are playing cage, and I'm starting on the right flank here. Let's have a quick look around and see who we're with. We've got the Catalunya and a split over there. Team calls for A, and the obviously natural reaction is to go into B, because if you head over to C Cap, you die, because that's where the enemy team is concentrating. So it's good to see that somebody in the team is communicating. We'll give a quick acknowledgement, let them know that I understand what we're doing, and the rest of the team is doing pretty well as well. The destroyer is heading for the capture circle, enemy destroyer in there, obviously. So we'll let them scout it. We don't want to run face first into torpedoes. It is the Akatsuki. Not really having a shot at him for now, but he is going to come under. Okay, he's engaging the split, which is not a fight he wants to take, honestly. And there's the Bayard. So just shots out already at the Akatsuki, but Akatsuki has been slowing down. There are the Akatsuki torpedoes, which have been early spotted by the split. You see how important it is to have destroyer scouts here. And obviously the split now has Bayard issues. Now I have to turn in here, and that's where the absolutely dog-awful maneuverability of this ship comes in. So actually ending up taking one of the Akatsuki torpedoes. But the split is being engaged by the Bayard, which means it's my turn now to push. And Split's also being engaged by the Cherbourg, and they have managed to push us out of B Cup. So let's chase the Bayar away first. Give the split some breathing room here. These guns are not great so far. I mean, the Bayar is, well, they're light cruisers, and then there's that thing. If you just look at it funny, it actually blows up. So not doing an awful lot right now, but the Bayar also doesn't have an awful lot of hit points. Atlantico now as well, obviously pushing. Okay, that was a better salvo. And yes, that's the problem when you are fighting something like a Bayar. Now, Bayar goes behind the island, so I can't really do anything about him anymore. But I do, double fire. There, we're going to use the damage control, push forward to reduce the angle, and start unloading at the Cherbourg. Now, these are relatively low caliber guns, but I am within secondary range. And one of the destroyers is dead. I haven't been paying attention if it was the Akatsuki. Our friendly Atlantico has killed the enemy Ipiranga. And I don't want to close in on the Cherbourg because there's a Bayar and Atlantico over there. So, and my damage controls and cooldowns. Okay, one destroyer behind us, that's good to know, so he went the long way around. But yeah, the Cherbourg is pushing forward, and the fires is really what the problem is. Okay, goodbye, Mr. Cherbourg. That's the double fire that I can't really do an awful lot about, but this is what I meant with battlecruiser playstyle. Now I'm disengaging, so I'm going to sail away. See if we can get away from there. Give the team something else to shoot at. Draw some fire, but don't overstay your welcome. Now I did say Atlantico needs to die, but Atlantico is sort of far away at this point and not in a good angle for me. That thing is stupidly heavily armored, so even if I can hit it from there, it's not going to do an awful lot. And this gets a little better, but still a terrible angle. We'll give it a shot because the team's currently focusing on the Atlantico, as we should. So we're 2 kills ahead at this point. But yeah, that doesn't do an awful lot. There comes the Benson. So Nagato is in trouble. Let's see if the Catalunya can help him out, but I don't think so. I don't have the hit points to do much right now. I'm just going to do a long-range duel and try to keep the Vladivostok entertained while husbanding the rest of the hit points. Friendly Atlantico has taken out the enemy Atlantico. Well done. So now they are down to 3 ships. There's one cruiser. That's probably still the Bayar. If the Bayar is still alive, that's well done. But the Vladivostok is now engaging the Nagato because he was closer. But the Benson has just torpedoed the Nagato, so he's no longer going to do that. Which means the Catalunya on my side now doesn't have anything better to do than being a cruiser and dealing with the Benson. Let's enable the thing. And there actually, that was an interesting observation there. Have you seen the impacts from the 150s? They actually do full damage. So it seems to be that the 150mm high explosive, and these are blind fires at the Benson, can do full penetrations. The armor piercing on the main guns obviously just over penetrates, so it doesn't do an awful lot. But I have got the armor piercing loaded. I don't actually want to engage the Benson. This is a Catalunya problem. And I'm angling against the Atlantico, against the Vladivostok. There's the Benson. And yeah, Catalunya in best cruiser fashion is engaging the battleship rather than dealing with a destroyer. But that's what the secondaries are for. So yeah, so far the 150s actually seem to be doing reasonably well. But we do have to be careful with that Vladivostok there. Oh, that was a nice hit. But I am drawing the fire from him, and this is where if you angle your belt armor like that, and he hits you on the belt, it is seemingly doing a pretty decent job. And yeah, that Vladivostok is dead. Let's see if we can get the kill. No, the Catalunya burns him down before that. But in a game with 2 Ipirangas and 2 Atlanticos, I was surprised that I still managed to get up on top of it, which is unexpected. But you probably see what I mean with the playstyle, right? You play more like like a relatively heavily armed battlecruiser, which is actually not a terrible thing. I quite enjoy battlecruiser playstyles, and that's kind of what just led me to the conclusion that this might need a bit of skill here in order to play this successfully. Because if you just run out blindly, you just die to fires immediately. And better armor plating, yes or no, you're gonna be in trouble. So if you enjoy the German battle cruisers or the German battleships, this is sort of a hybrid between them almost. And and it's got good speed. It's got absolutely atrocious maneuverability. So you do have to be careful not to get yourself into close range torpedo duels. You have no sonar. So taking on destroyers, not your primary target really. Although if the punching power of the high explosive on the larger caliber guns is holding up, that might actually be compensating somewhat for that, because if that holds up on the higher tiers, then that will be really good. But yeah, so far on the stats, I was kind of meh. But in practice, I'm actually pleasantly surprised so far by this ship. It does have its weaknesses, which is good. But yeah, I will still do a full review on the ship once I have played. I think I've played about 5 games so far. So it's a bit small for a full review, which means I'm still going to test it a bit more. And then also go through the rest of the line. And that was my phone. It just fell on the ground again. Good that I have carpet here. Seriously, how am I managing to put the... Anyway, that's it for me today. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.